Minimum web thickness as per clause 8.6.1 of IS 800 2007 is based on two criteria. First one is serviceability requirement, in which the first is when transfer stiffeners are not provided, then d by Tw should be less than or equal to 200 times of epsilon W, where epsilon W is under root of 250 by Fy of web. This is when web connected to flanges along both longitudinal edges, whereas this d by Tw should be less than or equal to 90 times of epsilon W when web connected to flanges along one longitudinal edge only, whereas the other one is when only transfer stiffeners are provided and in webs connected to flanges along both longitudinal edges, then the first case is when 3D is greater than or equal to C is greater than or equal to D, then D by Tw should be less than or equal to 200 times of epsilon W, whereas when 0.74 D is less than or equal to C is less than D, then C by Tw should be less than or equal to 200 times of epsilon W, whereas when C is less than 0.74 D, then D by Tw should be less than or equal to 270 times of epsilon W, and whereas when C is greater than 3D, then the web is considered as unstiffened. That is, stiffness are not provided to the web, whereas case C is when transfer stiffeners and longitudinal stiffeners are provided at one level only, and this compression point to T from compression flange is the distance where a transfer stiffener is provided. Then Our first case is when 2.4D is greater than or equal to C is greater than or equal to D, then D by TW should be less than or equal to 250 times of epsilon W, and when the C lies between 0.74D, which is less than or equal to C is less than or equal to D, then C by TW should be less than or equal to 250 times of epsilon W, whereas when C is less than 0.74D, then D by TW should be less than or equal to 340 times of epsilon W, where here D is depth of the web and C is spacing of transverse stiffeners. And in this, the last case is when a second longitudinal stiffener and this second longitudinal stiffener is located at neutral axis, located at neutral axis, when this second longitudinal stiffener is provided, then D by TW should be less than or equal to 400 times of epsilon W. This is the first criteria, whereas the second criteria is compression flange buckling requirement. This is in order to avoid buckling of compression flange into the web. The following requirements are taken, in which the first case is when transverse stiffeners are not provided, when transverse stiffeners are not provided, then the condition is D by TW should be less than or equal to 345 times of epsilon F square, where epsilon F is equal to under root of 250 by Fy of the flange, whereas when transverse stiffeners are provided, transverse stiffeners are provided and when C is greater than or equal to 1.5 times of D, then D by TW should be less than or equal to 345 times of epsilon F square, and when C is less than 1.5 D, then D by TW should be less than or equal to 345 times of epsilon F.